Question 1. The graduate nurse, GN, is admitting a client for labor induction who is prescribed misoprostol for cervical ripening. Before misoprostol is administered, which of the following statements by the GN should be concerning to the supervising nurse? Select all that apply. 1. 4-oxytocin and misoprostol may be administered at the same time. 2. The client has had 2 prior cesarean births. 3. The client's cervical examination is 0 cm, 25% effaced, -3 station. 4. The client's contraction pattern is currently 6 contractions in 10 minutes. 5. The prescribed oral route if the administration is appropriate. Correct answer: 1, 2, 4. 1. 4-oxytocin and misoprostol may be administered at the same time. 2. The client has had 2 prior cesarean births. 4. The client's contraction pattern is currently 6 contractions in 10 minutes. Question 1 Explanation. Misoprostol, Cytotec, a prostaglandin E1, is a cervical ripening agent. Cervical ripening is a process that normally occurs before the onset of labor in which the cervix softens and become more pliable so that dilation and effacement can occur more easily during contractions. Mechanical or pharmacologic cervical ripening methods stimulate this process and increase the client's probability of achieving a vaginal birth. In addition to ripening the cervix, prostaglandins, e.g., misoprostol, dinoprostone, can stimulate frequent contractions. Administration of misoprostol is contraindicated if the client is receiving another uterotonic simultaneously, e.g., oxytocin. The client has history of uterine surgery, e.g., cesarean birth due to an increased risk of uterine rupture at the surgical scar site. The client has an abnormal fetal heart rate pattern or uterine tachycetol, more than 5 contractions in 10 minutes. Question 2. The nurse is preparing to administer platelets. The nurse should 1. Check the ABO compatibility. 2. Administer the platelets slowly. 3. Gently rotate the bag. 4. Use a whole blood tubing set. Correct answer: 3. Gently rotate the bag. Question 2 Explanation. The bag containing platelets needs to be gently rotated to prevent clumping. ABO compatibility is not a necessary requirement, but human leukocyte antigen, HLA, matching of lymphocytes may be completed to avoid development of anti-HLA antibodies when multiple platelet transfusions are necessary. Platelets should be administered as fast as can be tolerated by the client to avoid aggregation. Most institutions use tubing especially for platelets instead of tubing for blood and blood products. Question 3. The nurse is caring for a client with suspected Graves' disease. Which assessment finding requires priority intervention? 1. Agitation and confusion. 2. Heat intolerance. 3. Pulse of 110 per minute, irregular rhythm. 4. Red and bulging eyes. Correct answer: 1. Agitation and confusion. Question 3 Explanation. Thyroid storm is a serious and potentially life-threatening emergency for clients with Graves' disease. This condition occurs when the thyroid gland releases large amounts of thyroid hormone in response to stress, e.g. trauma, surgery, infection. Characteristic features include tachycardia, hypertension, cardiac arrhythmias, e.g. atrial fibrillation, and fever up to 104 to 106 F, 40 to 41 C. Other findings include severe nausea, vomiting, anxiety, altered mentation, and seizures. Question 4. The nurse assessing a client with an upper gastrointestinal (GI) bleed would expect the client's stool to have which appearance? 1. Black tarry. 2. Bright red bloody. 3. Light gray clay colored. 4. Small, dry, rocky hard masses. Correct answer: 1. Black tarry. Question 4 Explanation. The nurse would expect a client experiencing an upper GL bleed to have black tarry stools, melena. As blood passes through the gastrointestinal tract, digestion of the blood ensues, producing the black tarry appearance. Question 5. A client in the post-anesthesia care unit is being actively rewarmed with an external warming device. How often should the nurse monitor the client's body temperature? A. Every 5 minutes. B. Every 10 minutes. C. Every 15 minutes. D. Every 20 minutes. Correct answer: C. Every 15 minutes. Question 5 Explanation. In order to prevent burns, the nurse should assess the client's temperature every 15 minutes when using an external warming device. Question 6. A 1-week-old infant has surgery to repair a cleft lip. Which is the priority concern when the child returns from the recovery room? A. Feeding method. B. Maintaining airway. C. Preventing scarring of the lip. D. Preventing incisional infection. Correct answer, B. Maintaining airway. Question 6 Explanation. Immediately after surgery, the concern is airway. Because of surgery to the nares and the fact that newborns are obligate nasal breathers, swelling could occlude the nares. Feeding method will be a concern because sucking will interfere with the integrity of the suture line. Preventing scarring and infection are also concerns but not immediately on return to the floor. Question 7. The nurse is caring for a client with cervical cancer. The nurse notes that the radium implant has become dislodged. Which of the following actions should the nurse take first? 1. Grasp the implant with a sterile hemostat and carefully reinsert it into the client. 2. Wrap the implant in a blanket and place it behind a lead shield. 3. Ensure the implant is picked up with long-handled forceps and placed in a lead container. 4. Obtain a dosimeter reading on the client and report it to the physician. Correct answer, 3. Ensure the implant is picked up with long-handled forceps and placed in a lead container. Question 7 Explanation. The priority is to secure the implant to prevent unwanted and dangerous radiation exposure. The implant should be picked up with long-handled forceps and then placed in a lead container. This equipment should be kept in the room of any client receiving this therapy so that it is readily available. Institutional guidelines and procedures for managing dislodgement should be followed. Radiology is usually involved as soon as dislodgement occurs. Question 8. A client is being treated for injuries sustained in an automobile accident. The client has a central venous pressure, CVP, line in place. The nurse recognizes that CVP measurement reflects which of the following? 1. Cardiac output. 2. Pressure in the left ventricle. 3. Pressure in the right atrium. 4. Pressure in the pulmonary artery. Correct answer, 2. Pressure in the right atrium. Question 8 Explanation. Pressure in the right atrium is determined by blood volume, vascular tone, action of right side of heart. Question 9. The nurse measures the amount of bile drainage from a T-tube and records it by which one of the following methods? 1. Adding it to the client's urine output. 2. Charting it separately on the output record. 3. Adding it to the amount of wound drainage. 4. Subtracting it from the total intake for each day. Correct answer, 2. Charting it separately on the output record. Question 9 Explanation. T-tube bile drainage is recorded separately on the output record. Adding the T-tube drainage to the urine output or wound drainage makes it difficult to accurately determine the amounts of bile, urine, or drainage. The client's total intake will be incorrect if drainage is subtracted from it. Question 10. A patient has been stabbed in the neck and presents with an expanding neck hematoma. What is the next step in the management of this patient? 1. Orotracheal or nasotracheal intubation. 2. Emergency room open tracheostomy. 3. Percutaneous tracheostomy. 4. Stat angiogram and embolization and or stenting. Correct answer, 1. Orotracheal or nasotracheal intubation. Question 10 Explanation. In any trauma patient, the first goal is always airway control. One can use orotracheal or endotracheal intubation as a means of acquiring airway control. An expanding neck hematoma can easily compresses the airways, distort the anatomy, and lead to airway compromise. Endotracheal intubation should be done before this happens. Any type of neck surgery in the presence of an expanding hematoma can lead to exsanguination and distortion of the airway anatomy. Question 11. The client has returned to your unit after an escharotomy of the forearm. What is the priority nursing assessment? 1. Infection. 2. Incision. 3. Pain. 4. Tissue perfusion. Correct answer, 4. Tissue perfusion. Question 11 Explanation. Escharotomy is done for lack of circulation. So check circulation first. Pain is one indicator of adequate circulation. Question 12. The nurse should teach the client with erectile dysfunction, ED, to alter his lifestyle to 1. Avoid alcohol. 2. Follow a low-salt diet. 3. Decrease smoking. 4. Increase attempts at sexual intercourse. Correct answer: 1. Avoid alcohol. Question 12 explanation: avoidance of alcohol can improve the outcome of therapy. Alcohol and smoking can affect a man's ability to have and maintain an erection. The client should be encouraged to follow a healthy diet, but no specific diet is associated with improvement of sexual function. The client should cease smoking, not just decrease smoking. Increasing attempts at intercourse without treatment will not facilitate improvement. The client should be reassured that ED is a common problem and that help is available. Question 13. Which of the following principles is affected by a nurse's cultural or ethnic background? A. Veracity. B. Code of conduct. C. Ethics. D. Morals. Correct answer: D. Morals. Question 13 explanation: the term ethics refers to the decisions that a nurse makes during her practice. She often pulls from a variety of ethical theories to help shape those decisions. Morals are related to ethics but are also supported by the nurse's culture and ethnic background. The code of conduct outlines her responsibilities and the appropriate behavior within the organization. Veracity refers to the need for healthcare providers to always tell the truth when giving information to their patients. Question 14. The doctrines found in the Nursing Code of Ethics have all of the following attributes except they are not: A. Meant to guide a nurse's practice. B. Mandatory. C. Universal. D. Optional. Correct answer: D. Optional. Question 14 explanation: the Nursing Code of Ethics refers to principles that guide a nurse's decision-making and standards of practice. The standards in the code are universal, meaning that they should apply to every nurse, regardless of their location or type of nursing practice. Adherence to the Code of Ethics is not optional. Question 15. The right to self-determination refers to the A. Nurses' and physicians' rights to make the most appropriate decision regarding a patient's care. B. Physicians' right to make decisions about a patient's care if the patient is no longer able to make decisions. C. Patient's right to make decisions regarding care. D. Patient's right to choose a physician. Correct answer: C. Patient's right to make decisions regarding care. Question 15 explanation: the patient's right to self-determination describes the right that a patient has for decision-making during care. The patient has the ultimate responsibility for making his or her own decisions, regardless of whether the physician or nurse agrees. This may include completely withdrawing care or choosing a less popular option. The practitioner must be careful to avoid coercing the patient but must be sure that the patient has all of the information needed to make an informed decision. If a patient is unable to make his or her own decisions, he or she has the right to appoint someone, usually family or a close friend, to make those decisions. Question 16. What is the final step in the ethical decision-making process? A. Carry out the decision. B. Identify the issue. C. Make changes based on an evaluation of the original plan. D. Consult an ethics expert or committee. Correct answer: C. Make changes based on an evaluation of the original plan. Question 16 explanation: there are multiple steps in making ethical decisions, including identifying the problem and ethical issue, researching the issue, determining who will make the final decision, evaluating the ethical issues surrounding the health problem, looking for alternatives, carrying out the plan, and modifying it based on an evaluation of the proposal. Question 17. Which term listed below describes the idea that the nurse should do no harm to the patient? A. Autonomy. B. Beneficence. C. Veracity. D. Non-maleficence. Correct answer: D. Non-maleficence. Question 17 explanation: beneficence is the principle of doing right by the patient, as in acting in his or her best interest. Autonomy refers to the patient's right to make his or her own decisions regarding care. Veracity refers to the idea that healthcare providers are required to be honest with their patients and always tell the truth. Non-maleficence is the idea that the nurse should do no harm to their patients. 18. Which of the following theories describes the idea that ethical conflicts should be resolved, according to the obligations of the nurse? A. Utilitarianism. B. Virtue. C. Deontology. D. Egoist. Correct answer: C. Deontology. Question 18 explanation: the answer is deontology, which focuses on the obligations of the nurse as the basis for making ethical decisions. The primary focus of utilitarianism is to do the most good for the most number of people. Virtue theory looks at the intention of the action. The belief is that actions done with good intentions are ethical. Egoist theory focuses on the best interests of the individual. Question 19. All of the following provisions are included in the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act except A. Protection of patients' privacy. B. Prevention of patients from sharing their private medical information with their insurance carrier. C. Establishment of the need for institutions and providers to protect their patients' health records. D. Prevention of healthcare providers from sharing medical information with other providers not directly involved in their patients' care. Correct answer, B. Prevention of patients from sharing their private medical information with their insurance carrier. Question 19. Explanation. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act is legislation that was designed to protect a patient's privacy. It requires healthcare providers to obtain written permission from the patient before sharing any protected health information with another individual or organization. This includes protecting the electronic medical record to ensure that data are not compromised. The patient is entitled to share personal information with whomever they choose. Question 20. All of the following statements about informed consent are correct except A. The nurse should never sign consent forms with a patient as this is the physician's role. B. Consent should be voluntary and can only be given by the patient or a legally appointed representative. C. The nurse should obtain consent from the patient after the physician has counseled the patient. D. Informed consent should be obtained before every procedure. Correct answer, A. The nurse should never sign consent forms with a patient as this is the physician's role. Question 20. Explanation. Informed consent should only be obtained by the physician and must be done before any procedure or treatment. The physician is responsible for counseling the patient, including risks, benefits, alternatives, processes, procedures, and prognoses. The nurse's role is to help the patient sign the forms, once the patient has been appropriately counseled by the physician. If informed consent has not been obtained, it is the nurse's responsibility to bring it to the attention of the physician. Question 21. A patient comes into the emergency room with a gunshot wound to his back. He states that the gun accidentally went off while he was cleaning it. What should the nurse do? A. Make an anonymous report to the police department. B. Do not report the incident as the patient has the right to privacy. C. Encourage the patient to report his injury to the police. D. Inform the law enforcement authorities, according to hospital protocol. Correct answer, D. Inform the law enforcement authorities, according to hospital protocol. Question 21. Explanation. While it is true that patients have a right to privacy, the nurse is also responsible for reporting suspicious injuries. The patient reports that the gun went off while cleaning it, but the entrance wound is in his back, making his story suspicious. Because it appears that the gunshot wound is the result of criminal activity, the nurse must make the report to the police department. Question 22. All of the following are one of the 5 rights of delegation except the A. Right person. B. Right circumstances. C. Right supervision/evaluation. D. Right task. E. Right communication. F. Right department. Correct answer, F. Right department. Question 22. Explanation. The 5 rights of delegation are the right task, right circumstances, right person, right communication, and right supervision/evaluation. The nurse is ultimately responsible for all delegated tasks and must ensure that she delegates the correct task to a person who is qualified and able to perform the task. The right department is not one of the 5 rights of delegation. Question 23. Which of the following statements about advocacy is correct? A. Nurses must safeguard a patient's rights and safety at all times. B. Nurses must advocate for their patients as long as they align themselves with the treating physician. C. As part of a nurse's responsibility to advocate for the patient, the nurse must counsel the patient before obtaining informed consent. D. The nurse is responsible for talking the patient into the correct treatment decisions. Correct answer, A. Nurses must safeguard a patient's rights and safety at all times. Question 23. Explanation. Advocacy is the act of speaking up for one's vulnerable patients to ensure that their rights and needs are met and protected and that they are receiving safe, appropriate care. This may mean helping the patient to disagree with the physician in an effective manner. Nurses are never to obtain informed consent, They can assist the patient in signing the forms, but it is the responsibility of the physician to counsel the patient. Talking a patient into a treatment decision with which they are not comfortable is not advocacy. Question 24. What is one way that a nurse can minimize the chances of being found negligent in court if sued by a patient? A. Do what the nurse believes is correct, especially if the physician appears to be making an incorrect decision. B. Follow the physician's instructions exactly. C. Follow the wishes of family members of a terminally ill patient, even if they do not have power of attorney. D. Make sure that the nursing practice is in accordance with the standards of care. Correct answer, D. Make sure that the nursing practice is in accordance with the standards of care. Question 24 Explanation. Ensuring that nursing practice is in accordance with the standards of care is the best way that nurses can defend themselves in court if sued for negligence. Following a physician's instructions blindly is not appropriate, as the physician may have made a mistake. Going against a physician's instructions is also not appropriate. The nurse should communicate her concerns to the physician and move up the chain of command if she still has serious concerns about his orders. The nurse must only follow the wishes of the patient or the person whom the patient appoints to make decisions for them if they are unable. Question 25. The nurse is caring for a patient who is newly diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. The patient is expressing anxiety and concerns about an upcoming surgical procedure. The nurse consults the chart and notes that the patient has not signed consent forms for the procedure. How should the nurse respond? A. Don't worry about the procedure, you will be fine. B. A bilateral mastectomy with dissection of the axillary lymph nodes is the most appropriate treatment for your case. C. Let me get your signature on the consent form while we are talking about your surgery. D. I understand that you have some concerns about your treatment. Let me get the physician to come in and talk to you. Correct answer, D. I understand that you have some concerns about your treatment. Let me get the physician to come in and talk to you. Question 25 Explanation. Offering false reassurance to the patient is not an effective method of communication and may make patients feel that are not being heard. The nurse is not responsible for obtaining the consent form, especially when it is clear that the patient still has serious concerns. Using difficult medical terminology does not clarify the patient's concerns. The nurse should inform the physician about the patient's concerns and have him or her speak with the patient before the patient signs the consent forms. Question 26. Which of the following processes will assist patients in obtaining necessary treatments or therapies for optimal outcome? A. Managed care. B. Multidisciplinary care. C. Case management. D. Healthcare. Correct answer, C. Case management. Question 26 Explanation. Case management is the process of assisting patients in obtaining necessary treatments or therapies for optimal outcome. Case management is a very individualized process and is specially tailored toward the needs of an individual patient. Question 27. Which individual is at greatest risk for developing hypertension? A. 45-year-old African American attorney. B. 60-year-old Asian American shop owner. Circa 40-year-old Caucasian nurse. D. 40-year-old Caucasian nurse. Correct answer, A. 45-year-old African American attorney. Question 27 Explanation. The incidence of hypertension is greater among African Americans than other groups in the U.S. The incidence among the Hispanic population is rising. Question 28. A child who ingested 15 maximum strength acetaminophen tablets 45 minutes ago is seen in the emergency department. Which of these orders should the nurse do first? A. Acetylcysteine, Mucomyst, 4H Pharmacy. B. Statin 4 dextrose 5% with 0.33% normal saline to keep vein open. C. Activated charcoal Pharmacy. D. Gastric lavage PRN. Correct answer, D. Gastric lavage PRN. Question 28 Explanation. Removing as much of the drug as possible is the first step in treatment for this drug overdose. This is best done by gastric lavage. The next drug to give would be activated charcoal, then Mucomyst and lastly the fourth fluids. Question 29. Which complication of cardiac catheterization should the nurse monitor for in the initial 24 hours after the procedure? A. Angina at rest. B. Thrombus formation. C. Dizziness. D. Dizziness. Correct answer, B. Thrombus formation. Question 29 Explanation. Thrombus formation in the coronary arteries is a potential problem in the initial 24 hours after a cardiac catheterization. A falling BP occurs along with hemorrhage of the insertion site, which is associated with the first 12 hours after the procedure. Question 30. A client is admitted to the emergency room with renal calculi and is complaining of moderate to severe flank pain and nausea. The client's temperature is 100.8 degrees Fahrenheit. The priority nursing goal for this client is A. Maintain fluid and electrolyte balance. B. Control nausea. C. Manage pain. D. Prevent urinary tract infection. Correct answer, C. Manage pain. Question 30. Explanation. The immediate goal of therapy is to alleviate the client's pain. Question 31. Nurse Jenny is instilling an otic solution into an adult male client's left ear. Nurse Jenny avoids doing which of the following as part of the procedure? A. Pulling the auricle backward and upward. B. Warming the solution to room temperature. C. Placing the tip of the dropper on the edge of the ear canal. D. Placing the client in a side-lying position. Correct answer, C. Placing the tip of the dropper on the edge of the ear canal. Question 31. Explanation. The dropper should not touch any object or any part of the client's ear. Don't allow the dropper tip to touch the ear, fingers, or any other surface. It could pick up bacteria or other germs that can lead to an ear infection. Question 32. Nurse B should instruct the male client with an ileostomy to report immediately which of the following symptoms? A. Absence of drainage from the ileostomy for 6 or more hours. B. Passage of liquid stool in the stoma. C. Occasional presence of undigested food. D. A temperature of 37.6 degrees Celsius. Correct answer, A. Absence of drainage from the ileostomy for 6 or more hours. Question 32. Explanation. Sudden decrease in drainage or onset of severe abdominal pain should be reported immediately to the physician because it could mean that obstruction has been developed. Sometimes the ileostomy does not function for short periods of time after surgery. This is not usually a problem, but if the stoma is not active for more than 6 hours and the patient experiences cramps or nausea, he may have an obstruction. Question 33. Jerry has been diagnosed with appendicitis. He develops a fever, hypotension, and tachycardia. The nurse suspects which of the following complications? A. Intestinal obstruction. B. Peritonitis. C. Bowel ischemia. D. Deficient fluid volume. Correct answer, B. Peritonitis. Question 33. Explanation. Complications of acute appendicitis or peritonitis, perforation and abscess development. Diffuse peritonitis and sepsis can also develop, which may progress to significant morbidity and possible death. Postoperative abscesses, hematomas, and wound complications are all complications that can be seen after appendectomies. If the wound does get infected, one may grow bacteroides. Recurrent appendicitis can occur if too much of the appendiceal stump is left after an appendectomy. Question 34. Which of the following complications should the nurse carefully monitor a client with acute pancreatitis? A. Myocardial infarction. B. Cirrhosis. C. Peptic ulcer. D. Pneumonia. Correct answer, D. Pneumonia. Question 34. Explanation. A client with acute pancreatitis is prone to complications associated with the respiratory system. The relationship between Mycoplasma pneumoniae infection and acute pancreatitis has been debated in the literature. In 1973, Mard et al. Reported 4 adult cases of acute pancreatitis following pneumonia due to MP. In 3 of the patients, the pancreatitis occurred in the 3rd week after the onset of cough, by which time the respiratory tract symptoms had almost disappeared. Question 35. Which of the following symptoms during the icteric phase of viral hepatitis should the nurse expect the client to inhibit? A. Watery stool. B. Yellow sclera. C. Tarry stool. D. Shortness of breath. Question 36. Marco, who was diagnosed with a brain tumor, was scheduled for craniotomy. In preventing the development of cerebral edema after surgery, the nurse should expect the use of A. Diuretics. B. Antihypertensive. C. Steroids. D. Anticonvulsants. Correct answer, B. Yellow sclera. Question 35. Explanation. Liver inflammation and obstruction block the normal flow of bile. Excess bilirubin turns the skin and sclera yellow and the urine dark and frothy. After 3 to 10 days, the urine darkens, followed by jaundice. Systemic symptoms often regress, and patients feel better despite worsening jaundice. The liver is usually enlarged and tender, but the edge of the liver remains soft and smooth. Mild splenomegaly occurs in 15 to 20% of patients. Jaundice usually peaks within 1 to 2 weeks. Correct answer, C. Steroids. Question 36 explanation. Glucocorticoids, steroids, are used for their anti-inflammatory action, which decreases the development of edema. Corticosteroids produce their effect through multiple pathways. In general, they produce anti-inflammatory and immunosuppressive effects, protein and carbohydrate metabolic effects, water and electrolyte effects, central nervous system effects, and blood cell effects. Question 37. Halfway through the administration of blood, the female client complains of lumbar pain. After stopping the infusion, Nurse Hazel should A. Increase the flow of normal saline. B. Assess the pain further. C. Notify the blood bank. D. Obtain vital signs. Correct answer, A. Increase the flow of normal saline. Question 37 explanation. The blood must be stopped at once, and then normal saline should be infused to keep the line patent and maintain blood volume. Treatment is to stop the transfusion, leave the fourth in place, intravenous fluids with normal saline, keeping urine output greater than 100 milliliters/hour. Diuretics may also be needed and cardiorespiratory support is appropriate. A hemolytic workup should also be performed, which includes sending the donor blood and tubing as well as post-transfusion labs, see below for a list, from the recipient to the blood bank. Question 38. Nurse Maureen knows that the positive diagnosis of HIV infection is made based on which of the following? A. A history of high-risk sexual behaviors. B. Positive ELISA and Western blot tests. C. Identification of an associated opportunistic infection. D. Evidence of extreme weight loss and high fever. Correct answer, B. Positive ELISA and Western blot tests. Question 38 explanation. These tests confirm the presence of HIV antibodies that occur in response to the presence of the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. When there is a possibility of acute or early HIV infection, the most sensitive screening immunoassay available, ideally, a combination antigen/antibody immunoassay, in addition to an HIV virologic, viral load, test is performed. RT-PCR-based viral load test is favored. A positive HIV virologic test generally indicates HIV infection. Question 39. Nurse Maureen is aware that a client who has been diagnosed with chronic renal failure recognizes an adequate amount of high biological value protein when the food the client selected from the menu was A. Raw carrots. B. Apple juice. C. Whole wheat bread. D. Cottage cheese. Correct answer, D. Cottage cheese. Question 39 explanation. 1 cup of cottage cheese contains approximately 225 calories, 27 grams of protein, 9 grams of fat, 30 milligrams cholesterol, and 6 grams of carbohydrate. Proteins of high biological value contain optimal levels of amino acids essential for life. In general, proteins from animal sources have a higher biological value than proteins from plant sources. Animal sources of protein are meat, poultry, fish, eggs, milk, cheese and yogurt, and they provide high biological value proteins. Question 40. Kenneth, who was diagnosed with uremic syndrome, has the potential to develop complications. Which among the following complications should the nurse anticipates? A. Flapping hand tremors. B. An elevated hematocrit level. C. Hypotension. D. Hypokalemia. Correct answer, A. Flapping hand tremors. Question 40 explanation. Elevation of uremic waste products causes irritation of the nerves, resulting in flapping hand tremors. The classic description has been in hepatic diseases, but other causes can commonly cause asterixis, including azotemia and respiratory disease. Asterixis is a disorder of motor control characterized by an inability to actively maintain a position and consequent irregular myoclonic lapses of posture affecting various parts of the body independently. Question 41. A client is admitted to the hospital with benign prostatic hyperplasia. The nurse most relevant assessment would be A. Flank pain radiating in the groin. B. Distension of the lower abdomen. C. Perineal edema. D. Urethral discharge. Correct answer, B. Distension of the lower abdomen. Question 41 explanation. This indicates that the bladder is distended with urine, therefore palpable. In the elective setting, the examination should include abdominal examination, looking for a palpable bladder/lung pain, and examination of external genitalia, meatal stenosis or phimosis. Benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH, refers to the non-malignant growth or hyperplasia of prostate tissue and is a common cause of lower urinary tract symptoms in men. Question 42. A client has undergone a penile implant. After 24 hours of surgery, the client's scrotum was edematous and painful. The nurse should A. Assist the client with sitz bath. B. Apply warm soaks in the scrotum. C. Elevate the scrotum using a soft support. D. Prepare for a possible incision and drainage. Correct answer, C. Elevate the scrotum using a soft support. Question 42. Explanation. Elevation increases lymphatic drainage, reducing edema and pain. The penis should then be placed upward on the lower abdomen, to limit any downward curvature of this penis postoperatively. Scrotal support or tight mesh underwear may be used after the sterile dressing is removed. Question 43. Nurse Hazel receives emergency laboratory results for a client with chest pain and immediately informs the physician. An increased myoglobin level suggests which of the following? A. Liver disease. B. Myocardial damage. C. Hypertension. D. Cancer. Correct answer, B. Myocardial damage. Question 43. Explanation. Detection of myoglobin is a diagnostic tool to determine whether myocardial damage has occurred. Myoglobin, an oxygen-carrying protein found in cardiac muscle and striated skeletal muscle, presents an attractive alternative to CPK and LDH in the emergency department setting for identification of acute myocardial infarction. Myoglobin levels may be elevated in the serum within 1 hour after myocardial cell death, with peak levels reached within 4 to 6 hours. Question 44. Nurse Maureen would expect a client with mitral stenosis would demonstrate symptoms associated with congestion in the A. Right atrium. B. Superior vena cava. C. Aorta. D. Pulmonary. Correct answer, D. Pulmonary. Question 44. Explanation. When mitral stenosis is present, the left atrium has difficulty emptying its contents into the left ventricle because there is no valve to prevent backward flow into the pulmonary vein. The pulmonary circulation is under pressure. Mitral valve areas less than 2 square centimeters causes an impediment to the blood flow from the left atrium into the left ventricle. This creates a pressure gradient across the mitral valve. As the gradient across the mitral valve increases, the left ventricle requires the atrial kick to fill with blood. Question 45. A client has been diagnosed with hypertension. The nurse priority nursing diagnosis would be A. Ineffective health maintenance. B. Impaired skin integrity. C. Deficient fluid volume. D. Pain. Correct answer, A. Ineffective health maintenance. Question 45. Explanation. Managing hypertension is the priority for the client with hypertension. Clients with hypertension frequently do not experience pain, deficient volume, or impaired skin integrity. It is the asymptomatic nature of hypertension that makes it so difficult to treat. Monitor and record BP. Measure both arms and thighs 3 times, 3 to 5 minutes apart while the patient is at rest, then sitting, then standing for initial evaluation. Use correct cuff size and accurate technique. Question 46. Nurse Hazel teaches the client with angina about common expected side effects of nitroglycerin, including A. High blood pressure. B. Stomach cramps. C. Headache. D. Shortness of breath. Correct answer, C. Headache. Question 46. Explanation. Because of its widespread vasodilating effects, nitroglycerin often produces side effects such as headache, hypotension, and dizziness. Headaches can be severe, throbbing, and persistent and may occur immediately after use. Vasodilation and venous pooling can increase the amount of blood in the cranial space, resulting in increased intracranial pressures. This can cause persistent, throbbing headaches, along with confusion, fever, vertigo, nausea, vomiting, and visual disturbances. Question 47. The following are lipid abnormalities. Which of the following is a risk factor for the development of atherosclerosis and PVD? A. High levels of low-density lipid, LDL, cholesterol. B. High levels of high-density lipid, HDL, cholesterol. C. Low-concentration triglycerides. D. Low levels of LDL cholesterol. Correct answer, A. High levels of low-density lipid, LDL, cholesterol. Question 47. Explanation. An increase in LDL cholesterol concentration has been documented as a risk factor for the development of atherosclerosis. LDL cholesterol is not broken down into the liver but is deposited into the wall of the blood vessels. As the LDL particles leave the blood and enter the arterial intima, they accumulate by being trapped by proteoglycans and are modified. While the modifications of LDL are not elucidated, oxidative modification generating oxidized LDL appears to be an attractive candidate. Question 48. Which of the following represents a significant risk immediately after surgery for repair of aortic aneurysm? A. Potential wound infection. B. Potential ineffective coping. C. Potential electrolyte imbalance. D. Potential alteration in renal perfusion. Correct answer: D. Potential alteration in renal perfusion. Question 48. Explanation: there is a potential alteration in renal perfusion manifested by decreased urine output. The altered renal perfusion may be related to renal artery embolism, prolonged hypotension, or prolonged aortic cross-clamping during the surgery. Intervention or surgical treatment risks versus benefits of repair in patients at increased risk for open surgery should be considered, and no intervention may be appropriate in some cases. Patients should be well informed regarding their options, risks of repair, and potential postoperative complications. Question 49. Nurse Josie should instruct the client to eat which of the following foods to obtain the best supply of vitamin B12? A. Dairy products. B. Vegetables. C. Grains. D. Broccoli. Correct answer: A. Dairy products. Question 49. Explanation: good sources of vitamin B12 are dairy products and meats. Among animal products, those from ruminants are particularly rich in vitamin B12, which is naturally synthesized by the ruminal microflora and transferred to milk. Dairy products retain, in general, a major part of the vitamin B12 naturally present in milk. Some processing conditions may even add to the basal level by production of vitamin B12 from propionic bacteria in Swiss-type cheeses. Question 50. Karen has been diagnosed with aplastic anemia. The nurse monitors for changes in which of the following physiologic functions? A. Bowel function. B. Peripheral sensation. C. Bleeding tendencies. D. Intake and output. Correct answer: C. Bleeding tendencies. Question 50. Explanation: aplastic anemia decreases the bone marrow production of RBCs, white blood cells, and platelets. The client is at risk for bruising and bleeding tendencies. Aplastic anemia refers to the syndrome of chronic primary hematopoietic failure from injury leading to diminished or absent hematopoietic precursors in the bone marrow and attendant pancytopenia. Question 51. Lydia is scheduled for elective splenectomy. Before the client goes to surgery, the nurse in charge final assessment would be: A. Signed consent. B. Vital signs. C. Name band. D. Empty bladder. Correct answer: B. Vital signs. Question 51. Explanation: an elective procedure is scheduled in advance so that all preparations can be completed ahead of time. The vital signs are the final check that must be completed before the client leaves the room so that continuity of care and assessment is provided for. Question 52. What is the peak age range for acquiring acute lymphocytic leukemia, ALL? A. 4 to 12 years. B. 20 to 30 years. C. 40 to 50 years. D. 60 to 70 years. Correct answer: A. 4 to 12 years. Question 52. Explanation: the peak incidence of acute lymphocytic leukemia, ALL, is 4 years of age. It is uncommon after 15 years of age. It is diagnosed in about 4,000 people in the United States each year, with the majority being under the age of 18. It is the most common malignancy of childhood. The peak age of diagnosis is between 2 and 10 years of age. Question 53. Marie with acute lymphocytic leukemia suffers from nausea and headache. These clinical manifestations may indicate all of the following except: A. Effects of radiation. B. Chemotherapy side effects. C. Meningeal irritation. D. Gastric distension. Correct answer: D. Gastric distension. Question 53. Explanation: acute lymphocytic leukemia, ALL, does not cause gastric distension. It does invade the central nervous system, and clients experience headaches and vomiting from meningeal irritation. The primary care provider and nurse practitioner may be responsible for follow-up after treatment and report back to the interprofessional team. These patients need close monitoring as they are prone to infections, coagulation dyscrasias, and relapse. Question 54. A client has been diagnosed with disseminated intravascular coagulation, DIC. Which of the following is contraindicated with the client? A. Administering heparin. B. Administering Coumadin. C. Treating the underlying cause. D. Replacing depleted blood products. Correct answer, B. Administering Coumadin. Question 54 Explanation. Disseminated intravascular coagulation, DIC, has not been found to respond to oral anticoagulants such as Coumadin. Warfarin is contraindicated in patients with hemorrhagic tendencies, for example, active GI ulceration, patients bleeding from the GI, respiratory, or GU tract, a cerebral aneurysm, central nervous system, CNS, hemorrhage, dissecting aortic aneurysm, spinal puncture and other diagnostic or therapeutic procedures with the potential for significant bleeding. Question 55. Which of the following findings is the best indication that fluid replacement for the client with hypovolemic shock is adequate? A. Urine output greater than 30 milliliters per hour. B. Respiratory rate of 21 breaths/minute. C. Diastolic blood pressure greater than 90 millimeters of mercury. D. Systolic blood pressure greater than 110 millimeters of mercury. Correct answer, A. Urine output greater than 30 milliliters per hour. Question 55 Explanation. Urine output provides the most sensitive indication of the client's response to therapy for hypovolemic shock. Urine output should be consistently greater than 30 to 35 milliliters per hour. Renal losses of salt and fluid can lead to hypovolemic shock. The kidneys usually excrete sodium and water in a manner that matches intake. Diuretic therapy and osmotic diuresis from hyperglycemia can lead to excessive renal sodium and volume loss. In addition, there are several tubular and interstitial diseases beyond the scope of this article that cause severe salt wasting nephropathy. Question 56. Which of the following signs and symptoms would Nurse Maureen include in her teaching plan as an early manifestation of laryngeal cancer? A. Stomatitis. B. Airway obstruction. C. Hoarseness. D. Dysphagia. Correct answer, C. Hoarseness. Question 56 Explanation. Early warning signs of laryngeal cancer can vary depending on tumor location. Hoarseness lasting 2 weeks should be evaluated because it is one of the most common warning signs. Patients are typically male with a history of current or past tobacco smoking. Hoarseness is often an early presenting symptom of glottic cancers due to vocal cord immobility or fixation, with pain with swallowing and referred ear pain indicating advanced disease. Question 57. A non-immunized child appears at the clinic with a visible rash. Which of the following observations indicates the child may have rubeola, measles? A. Small blue-white spots are visible on the oral mucosa. B. The rash begins on the trunk and spreads outward. C. There is a low-grade fever. D. The lesions have a teardrop on a rose petal appearance. Correct answer, A. Small blue-white spots are visible on the oral mucosa. Question 57 Explanation. Koplik spots are small blue-white spots visible on the oral mucosa and are characteristic of measles infection. Most cases show the characteristic Koplik spots of the disease, located in the buccal mucosa at the height of the second molar, and appear 2 to 3 days before the rash and disappear on the third day. Question 58. A child is seen in the emergency department for scarlet fever. Which of the following descriptions of scarlet fever is not correct? A. Scarlet fever is caused by infection with group A Streptococcus bacteria. B. Strawberry tongue is a characteristic sign. C. Petechiae occur on the soft palate. D. The pharynx is red and swollen. Correct answer, C. Petechiae occur on the soft palate. Question 58 Explanation. Petechiae on the soft palate are characteristic of rubella infection. Postnatal infection with rubella can be asymptomatic in approximately 25% to 50% of the patients, especially in young children. The incubation period ranges from 14 to 21 days and is followed by a prodromal illness characterized by low-grade fever, malaise, anorexia, headaches, sore throat, and adenopathy. Question 59. A child weighing 30 kilograms arrives at the clinic with diffuse itching as the result of an allergic reaction to an insect bite. Diphenhydramine, Benadryl 25 mg 3 times a day is prescribed. The correct pediatric dose is 5 mg/kg/day. Which of the following best describes the prescribed drug dose? A. It is the correct dose. B. The dose is too low. C. The dose is too high. D. The dose should be increased or decreased, depending on the symptoms. Correct answer, B. The dose is too low. Question 59 Explanation. This child weighs 30 kilograms, and the pediatric dose of diphenhydramine is 5 mg/kg/day. 5 by 30 equals 150 per day. Therefore, the correct dose is 150 mg/day. Diphenhydramine, which is available as an over-the-counter medication, is a first-generation antihistamine that is used in a variety of conditions to treat and prevent dystonias, insomnia, pruritus, urticaria, vertigo, and motion sickness. Question 60. The mother of a 2-month-old infant brings the child to the clinic for a well baby check. She is concerned because she feels only one testis in the scrotal sac. Which of the following statements about the undescended testis is the most accurate? A. Normally, the testes are descended by birth. B. The infant will likely require surgical intervention. C. The infant probably has only one testis. D. Normally, the testes descend by 1 year of age. Correct answer, D. Normally, the testes descend by 1 year of age. Question 60. Explanation. Normally, the testes descend by 1 year of age. In young infants, it is common for the testes to retract into the inguinal canal when the environment is cold or the cremasteric reflex is stimulated. About 3% of full-term and 30% of premature male infants are born with one or both testicles undescended. Approximately 80% of cryptorchid testes descend by the 3rd month of life. This makes the true incidence around 1%. Question 61. Mrs. Chua, a 78-year-old client, is admitted with the diagnosis of mild chronic heart failure. The nurse expects to hear when listening to client's lungs indicative of chronic heart failure would be A. Stridor, B. Crackles, C. Wheezes, D. Friction rubs. Correct answer, B. Crackles. Question 61. Explanation. Left-sided heart failure causes fluid accumulation in the capillary network of the lung. Fluid eventually enters alveolar spaces and causes crackling sounds at the end of inspiration. Pulmonary edema may cause crackling sounds in the lungs. People with congestive heart failure, CHF, often have pulmonary edema. CHF occurs when the heart cannot pump blood effectively. This results in a backup of blood, which increases blood pressure and causes fluid to collect in the air sacs in the lungs. Question 62. Patrick, who is hospitalized following a myocardial infarction, asks the nurse why he is taking morphine. The nurse explains that morphine A. decreases anxiety and restlessness. B. prevents shock and relieves pain. C. dilates coronary blood vessels. D. helps prevent fibrillation of the heart. Correct answer, B. prevents shock and relieves pain. Question 62. Explanation. Morphine is a central nervous system depressant used to relieve the pain associated with myocardial infarction. It also decreases apprehension and prevents cardiogenic shock. FDA-approved usage of morphine sulfate includes moderate to severe pain that may be acute or chronic. Most commonly used in pain management, morphine provides major relief to patients afflicted with pain. Question 63. Which of the following should the nurse teach the client about the signs of digitalis toxicity? A. increased appetite. B. elevated blood pressure. C. skin rash over the chest and back. D. visual disturbances such as seeing yellow spots. Correct answer, D. visual disturbances such as seeing yellow spots. Question 63. Explanation. Seeing yellow spots and colored vision are common symptoms of digitalis toxicity. Of note, visual changes, especially changes involving colors such as seeing a yellow hue, are better known and specifically seen in digitalis toxicity. Other visual problems include photophobia, photopsia, and diminished visual acuity. Question 64. Nurse Tricia teaches a client with heart failure to take oral furosemide in the morning. The reason for this is to help A. retard rapid drug absorption. B. excrete excessive fluids accumulated at night. C. prevents sleep disturbances during night. D. prevention of electrolyte imbalance. Correct answer, C. prevents sleep disturbances during night. Question 64. Explanation. When diuretics are taken in the morning, the client will void frequently during daytime and will not need to void frequently at night. Normally, when an individual receives furosemide either orally or intravenously, it increases sodium excretion in urine. In a patient with extracellular volume expansion who has never had exposure to furosemide, the first dose of the drug causes significant sodium excretion and diuresis within the first 3 to 6 hours. Question 65. What would be the primary goal of therapy for a client with pulmonary edema and heart failure? A. enhance comfort. B. increase cardiac output. C. improve respiratory status. D. peripheral edema decreased. Correct answer, B. Increased cardiac output. Question 65 Explanation. The primary goal of therapy for the client with pulmonary edema or heart failure is increasing cardiac output. Pulmonary edema is an acute medical emergency requiring immediate intervention. Preload reduction decreases pulmonary capillary hydrostatic pressure and reduces fluid transudation into the pulmonary interstitium and alveoli. Afterload reduction increases cardiac output and improves renal perfusion, which allows for diuresis in the patient with fluid overload. Question 66. Nurse Linda is caring for a client with head injury and monitoring the client with decerebrate posturing. Which of the following is a characteristic of this type of posturing? A. Upper extremity flexion with lower extremity flexion. B. Upper extremity flexion with lower extremity extension. C. Extension of the extremities after a stimulus. D. Flexion of the extremities after stimulus. Correct answer, C. Extension of the extremities after a stimulus. Question 66 Explanation. Decerebrate posturing is the extension of the extremities after a stimulus which may occur with upper brainstem injury. Decerebrate posturing is described as adduction and internal rotation of the shoulder, extension at the elbows with pronation of the forearm, and flexion of the fingers. Question 67. A female client is taking Cascara Sagrada. Nurse Betty informs the client that the following may be experienced as side effects of this medication. A. GI bleeding. B. Peptic ulcer disease. C. Abdominal cramps. D. Partial bowel obstruction. Correct answer, C. Abdominal cramps. Question 67 Explanation. The most frequent side effects of Cascara Sagrada, laxative, is abdominal cramps and nausea. Cascara Sagrada is possibly safe for most adults when taken for less than 1 week. Side effects include stomach discomfort and cramps. Question 68. Dr. Marquez orders a continuous intravenous nitroglycerin infusion for the client suffering from myocardial infarction. Which of the following is the most essential nursing action? A. Monitoring urine output frequently. B. Monitoring blood pressure every 4 hours. C. Obtaining serum potassium levels daily. D. Obtaining infusion pump for the medication. Correct answer, D. Obtaining infusion pump for the medication. Question 68 Explanation. Administration of intravenous nitroglycerin infusion requires a pump for accurate control of medication. There are intravenous, 4, routes of administration for nitroglycerin used most commonly in emergency rooms and intensive care units, ICU. It is administered as a 5% dextrose in water drip and is indicated when sublingual nitroglycerin has failed to provide symptomatic relief or if rapid and continued relief of symptoms is necessary. When administered, its effect requires tight monitoring. Question 69. During the second day of hospitalization of the client after a myocardial infarction, which of the following is an expected outcome? A. Able to perform self-care activities without pain. B. Severe chest pain. C. Can recognize the risk factors of myocardial infarction. D. Can participate in cardiac rehabilitation walking program. Correct answer, A. Able to perform self-care activities without pain. Question 69 Explanation. By the second day of hospitalization after suffering a myocardial infarction, clients are able to perform care without chest pain. Instruct the patient to report pain immediately. Provide a quiet environment, calm activities, and comfort measures. Approach the patient calmly and confidently. Decreases external stimuli, which may aggravate anxiety and cardiac strain, limit coping abilities, and adjustment to the current situation. Question 70. A 68-year-old client is diagnosed with a right-sided brain attack and is admitted to the hospital. In caring for this client, the nurse should plan to A. Application of elastic stockings to prevent flaccid by muscle. B. Use hand roll and extend the left upper extremity on a pillow to prevent contractions. C. Use a bed cradle to prevent dorsiflexion of feet. D. Do passive range of motion exercise. Correct answer, B. Use hand roll and extend the left upper extremity on a pillow to prevent contractions. Question 70 Explanation. The left side of the body will be affected in a right-sided brain attack. Begin active or passive ROM to all extremities, including splinted, on admission. Encourage exercises such as quadriceps/glutes exercise, squeezing rubber ball, extension of fingers and legs/feet. Minimizes muscle atrophy, promotes circulation, helps prevent contractures. Reduces risk of hypercalciuria and osteoporosis if the underlying problem is hemorrhage. Question 71. Nurse Liza is assigned to care for a client who has returned to the nursing unit after left nephrectomy. Nurse Liza's highest priority would be A. Hourly urine output. B. Temperature. C. Able to turn side to side. D. Able to sips clear liquid. Correct answer, A. Hourly urine output. Question 71. Explanation. After nephrectomy, it is necessary to measure urine output hourly. This is done to assess the effectiveness of the remaining kidney, also to detect renal failure early. Immediately after surgery, the healthcare team will carefully watch the client's blood pressure, electrolytes and fluid balance. These body functions are controlled in part by the kidneys. The client will most likely have a urinary catheter, tube to drain urine, in the bladder for a short time during the recovery. Question 72. A 64-year-old male client with a long history of cardiovascular problems including hypertension and angina is to be scheduled for cardiac catheterization. During pre-cardiac catheterization teaching, Nurse Cherry should inform the client that the primary purpose of the procedure is A. To determine the existence of CHD. B. To visualize the disease process in the coronary arteries. C. To obtain the heart chamber's pressure. D. To measure oxygen content of different heart chambers. Correct answer, B. To visualize the disease process in the coronary arteries. Question 72. Explanation. The lumen of the arteries can be assessed by cardiac catheterization. Angina is usually caused by narrowing of the coronary arteries. Left heart catheterization has a diagnostic as well as therapeutic role. Although it is used for cardiac hemodynamics and assessment of valvular lesions, its main diagnostic role is the assessment of coronary artery disease. In the contemporary era, left heart catheterization, especially selective coronary angiogram, is considered the gold standard test for coronary artery disease diagnosis. Question 73. During the first several hours after a cardiac catheterization, it would be most essential for Nurse Cherry to A. Elevate the client's bed at 45 degrees. B. Instruct the client to cough and deep breathe every 2 hours. C. Frequently monitor the client's apical pulse and blood pressure. D. Monitor client's temperature every hour. Correct answer, C. Frequently monitor the client's apical pulse and blood pressure. Question 73. Explanation. Blood pressure is monitored to detect hypotension, which may indicate shock or hemorrhage. The apical pulse is taken to detect arrhythmias related to cardiac irritability. During the procedure, a nurse is assigned to monitor vital signs. After the procedure, the nurse is also responsible for ensuring that the access site is not bleeding and the distal extremity pulses are intact. Question 74. Kate, who has undergone mitral valve replacement, suddenly experiences continuous bleeding from the surgical incision during the postoperative period. Which of the following pharmaceutical agents should Nurse Liza prepare to administer to Kate? A. Protamine sulfate. B. Quinidine sulfate. C. Vitamin C. D. Coumadin. Correct answer, A. Protamine sulfate. Question 74. Explanation. Protamine sulfate is used to prevent continuous bleeding in a client who has undergone open heart surgery. Protamine is a medication used to reverse and neutralize the anticoagulant effects of heparin. Protamine is the specific antagonist that neutralizes heparin-induced anticoagulation. Protamine is a strongly alkaline, nearly 2/3 of the amino acid composition is arginine, polycationic low molecular weight protein found in salmon sperm that is also currently available in a recombinant form. Question 75. In reducing the risk of endocarditis, good dental care is an important measure. To promote good dental care in clients with endocarditis, in a teaching plan should include proper use of A. Dental floss. B. Electric toothbrush. C. Manual toothbrush. D. Irrigation device. Correct answer, C. Manual toothbrush. Question 75. Explanation. The use of an electric toothbrush, irrigation device or dental floss may cause bleeding of gums, allowing bacteria to enter and increasing the risk of endocarditis. Maintaining good oral hygiene and infection control can decrease the incidence of endocarditis in the moderate risk group of patients and can eliminate the necessity of antibiotic prophylaxis of endocarditis.